Lieutenant Colonel James Mercer flinched at the sound of a lawnmower backfiring down the street. Some habits from 20 years of combat deployments would take time to fade. He steadied his hands as he unpacked the triangular shadow box containing the flag that had flown over the memorial service for his platoon sergeant in Kandahar. Tomorrow, that same flag would fly in front of his new home. "You sure about this, babe?" Sarah asked, sliding her arms around his waist from behind. "I skimmed those HOA documents. They're pretty strict." James chuckled. "What are they going to do? Court-martial me?" The next morning, James woke before dawn, a lifetime habit he couldn't break. He carried the flag outside with ceremonial precision, attaching it to the 20-foot pole he'd installed yesterday. As the fabric caught the morning breeze, he stood at attention and saluted, not caring that he was wearing sweatpants and a faded army shirt. 3 houses down, a woman in a pink tracksuit stopped power-walking to stare, her expression souring as she pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. "Welcome to the neighborhood," James muttered to himself, already sensing the battle lines being drawn. "It appears we have a situation," declared the shrill voice at James's front door 3 days later. The woman didn't offer her name or even a greeting before thrusting a red violation notice toward his chest. "This flagpole is an unauthorized structure. Article 7, Section 3 of our community bylaws clearly prohibits lawn ornaments exceeding 4 feet in height." James recognized her from his morning ritual, the power walker with the perpetual scowl. "Ma'am, that's not a lawn ornament. That's an American flag. I'm Diane Winters, HOA president," she continued as if he hadn't spoken, gesturing toward his front yard where the flag rippled in the afternoon sunlight. "You have 48 hours to remove it before fines begin accruing. $100 per day." James felt his jaw tighten, but maintained his composure, the same controlled response that had served him through mortar attacks and ambushes. "The flag stays." Diane's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps I'm not being clear. This is about property values and neighborhood aesthetics. Your military sentimentality doesn't supersede our community standards. And perhaps federal law supersedes your handbook." James replied evenly, though he wasn't entirely sure if that was true. Still, the dismissive way she'd said military sentimentality made his blood boil. As she turned to leave, Diane called over her shoulder, "I've dealt with difficult residents before, Mr. Mercer. I always win." From across the street, a neighbor watering his roses gave James a sympathetic thumbs up when Diane wasn't looking. "You should see this, honey," Sarah called from their home office that evening, her legal background already proving invaluable. On her laptop screen was the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005. James leaned in, reading aloud, "No Homeowners Association may adopt or enforce any policy that would restrict or prevent a member from displaying the flag of the United States." His face broke into the first genuine smile since Diane's visit. "There's more," Sarah said, pulling up their state's enhanced veterans protection statutes. "And look what I found on the community Facebook page." She scrolled through dozens of complaints about Diane's reign of HOA terror, selective enforcement, personal vendettas, and even allegations of changing bylaws without proper notification. While Sarah dug deeper, James walked the neighborhood with his phone camera, documenting violations that hadn't been cited: oversized garden gnomes, unapproved lawn furniture, and ironically, a board member's decorative windmill that definitely exceeded the 4-foot limit. That night, James received a text from an unknown number. "I'm your neighbor Tom from 2 streets over, Marine Corps, retired. Heard about your flag situation. She tried the same with my service dog last year. There are more of us. Meeting at my place tomorrow, 1900 hours." The next morning, another violation notice appeared, this one threatening immediate legal action. But now James smiled as he plucked it from his door. He'd faced Taliban insurgents and IEDs. A suburban tyrant with a rulebook didn't stand a chance. The community center buzzed with unusual attendance for an HOA meeting. James counted at least 40 residents, 4 times the normal turnout according to Tom. Diane appeared flustered by the crowd, but quickly regained her composure, rushing through agenda items at lightning speed. Moving on to new business, she began, clearly intending to skip public comments. Point of order, called a silver-haired man from the back. According to our bylaws, resident comments must be heard before new business. Diane's smile tightened. Fine. Comments limited to 60 seconds each. James stood, his attorney friend Michael beside him. Good evening. I'm James Messer, new resident on Maple Drive. Rather than using my limited time, I'd like my counsel to address the board. Counsel? Diane sputtered. This isn't a courtroom. Not yet, Michael replied smoothly, distributing folders to each board member. But it could be. I've prepared a brief outlining how the flagpole citation violates the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act, the Veterans Protection Statutes, and potentially constitutes targeted harassment of a decorated combat veteran. As Michael continued his methodical legal explanation, Diane's face cycled through shock, anger, and fear. Which he attempted to interrupt, the vice president, a retired Judge James had met at Tom's gathering, raised his hand. I believe we should hear this, Diane. Particularly since it appears we've been enforcing regulations that may be legally unenforceable. The room erupted as residents began sharing their own stories. A widow described being fined for having her late husband's memorial bench in her garden. An elderly couple detailed monthly citations for bird feeders they physically couldn't reach to remove. Each account seemed to embolden others. This meeting is adjourned, Diane finally shouted, gathering her papers. Motion to continue, called the vice president, which passed immediately with a board vote of 4-1. As Diane stormed toward the exit, she found her path blocked by Tom and 3 other veterans, all standing with arms crossed. Excuse me, she huffed. We're just making sure you stay for the vote, Tom said pleasantly, since you're so dedicated to following procedures. 2 weeks later, James watched from his porch as a maintenance crew installed a new sign at the neighborhood entrance. Welcome to Oakwood Estates, a veteran-friendly community with a small American flag emblem in the corner. They work fast when they're not busy writing citations, remarked Sarah, handing him his morning coffee. The emergency board session following the showdown, as neighbors now called it, had resulted in immediate changes. Bylaws were revised to comply with federal laws. A third-party audit was commissioned to review all violations under Diane's leadership, and a special recall election was scheduled. Diane hadn't gone quietly. Local news picked up the story after she gave an inflammatory interview painting herself as a victim of militant presidents. The strategy backfired spectacularly when 3 different veterans shared their body cam footage of her confrontations, including one where she referred to a Purple Heart recipient as playing the military card. The community rallied in unexpected ways. James was startled one morning to find his front yard filled with small American flags, a silent show of support from neighbors he hadn't yet met. The formerly isolated households began connecting, with James and Tom establishing a veteran support network that quickly expanded to include 27 former service members living in Oakwood Estates. Colonel Messer, a tentative voice interrupted James's thoughts. A teenage boy stood at the edge of his driveway. I'm doing a school project on veterans. My grandpa was in Vietnam, but he never talks about it. Would you, maybe, help me understand what to say to him? As James invited the young man onto the porch, he noticed a moving truck down the street at Diane's house. Tom's wife Marjorie, now the interim HOA president until elections next month, waved as she walked her dog past. Running unopposed, she called with a wink. That evening, as the setting sun cast long shadows across Oakwood Estates, James performed his daily flag ceremony. But this time, he wasn't alone. 6 neighbors and the teenage boy joined him in respectful silence as the flag was lowered, carefully folded into a triangle, and stored for the night. Same time tomorrow? Asked one of the neighbors. James nodded, feeling the weight of his service years transform from burden to bridge. Same time every day.